It looks like an Oscar contender, but should you go to see a movie by a director famous for anti-Semitic and racist rants? Mel Gibson returns to theaters with Hacksaw Ridge, the story of a World War II pacifist who becomes a hero. But will it mean redemption for Gibson or another round of condemnation for the creator of Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, men, in July 2006, you'll remember that during a traffic stop for drunk driving, Mel Gibson told a Jewish police officer that, quote, effing Jews were responsible for all of the wars in the world. He later apologized for his behavior, acknowledged his lifelong alcoholism and struggle with manic depression, sought treatment, and reached out to Jewish leaders for guidance in how to seek forgiveness and redemption. But then, in 2010, the public heard him ranting again, this time at his girlfriend, using violent, obscene, and racist language. Now soon, Hacksaw Ridge, starring Jewish actor Andrew Garfield, heads to theaters after Gibson's decade-long hiatus from the screen. The trailer looks great, and critics are already raving and talking Oscar. But some say that we should not be so quick to excuse Gibson's egregious behavior, his anti-Semitism, or his racism. Now, Stephen Green, you can understand how some folks wouldn't want to give their money to a rich bigot. I mean, after all, how can we separate the artist from his art?
Because they're not the same thing. Like, artists, I think I might have said this yesterday at our backstage, are, for the most part, just horrible people. There's something about the arts that attracts just people with some really, really deep issues. It's not universal, of course. There are some wonderful exceptions. But by and large, just miserable, awful human beings. And I'm exaggerating, of course. But there is so much truth in that hyperbole that it may hardly be hyperbole. That said, boycotts by and large don't work. Let me give you a great historical example, not just of a boycott, but embargo as well. In the lead up to World War II, in the lead up to Pearl Harbor, the Japanese Imperial Fleet, those aircraft carriers, their battleships, were built largely out of American scrap steel. We were selling scrap metal to Japan that then used it to build the very warships that attacked us at Pearl Harbor and that had been waging war on the Japanese coast for 4 years prior to Pearl Harbor. And at any time from 1937 on, American consumers could have gone, hey, American scrap metal dealers, this is bad. You shouldn't be doing this, and we're going to boycott you. And, well, guess what? It never happened. But even if people had tried to organize it, how do you boycott a steel scrap deal? You can't do this thing. What finally put the pinch on Japan is when there was an official embargo on oil and steel trade to Japan and shut it down. That's what made the pinch. And you can't do that. Thank goodness you can't do that in the United States against culture. We have a First Amendment. We have freedom of expression. And the way you beat bad culture that you disagree with is to create for yourself better, more attractive culture that will attract more people and more money to you. That said, Roman Polanski, horrible human being, but his Macbeth taught me how to understand Macbeth, and I've been a fan of Macbeth ever since, not just Roman Polanski. Mel Gibson, horrible rants, wonderful movies sometimes. This new trailer looks great, and I don't make a whole lot of trips to see movies on the big screen anymore, but you better believe I'm going to take my wife. We're going to go out to dinner and have a great time on this one.
Well, and this one's fascinating, Steve, because we're not actually talking about competing with bad culture using good culture. We're actually talking about bad people creating, in many cases, good culture.
Yeah. And I say support the culture you agree with, because the culture, a work of art, transcends any human being that creates it, if it is a work of enduring quality.
So, Bill Whittle, what's wrong with boycotting people who engage in such reprehensible acts? I mean, doesn't a civil society have an obligation to send a clear signal that such behavior is beyond the pale?
A free society has citizens that can do whatever they damn well want to with their money.
Damn right.
And that's the bottom line. The thing that people constantly mistake in this country is criticism versus censorship. censorship is saying that because of what he said before, Mel Gibson doesn't get to make a movie anymore, ever. And, criticism is, I'm not going to go see it. I don't want this anti-Semite to have my money. There's nothing you can say to mitigate what Mel Gibson said. He actually said it. Certainly the first time he seemed remorseful, and I think he was probably remorseful too on the second time. And remorse matters. It matters to me anyway. But I think the one point I would like to make living out here is this. If you had pulled over any Hollywood director, producer, or star at 2 o'clock in the morning while they were drunk, you would get an amazing, amazing amount of this same exact kind of abuse. It's just endemic to the town here. Do you know who I am? That's really what it comes down to. You're pulling me over. Do you know who I am? Yeah, I know exactly who you are. So for me,
You're
it
the guy who's
depends
spending
on
a night in jail. That's who you are.
To me, it depends on the vehemence. Michael Moore's never going to get $1 from me, ever. But Michael Moore makes anti-American movies. If Michael Moore did make a pro-American movie, I'd go see it, and he'd probably burst into flames.
He burst into flames before he made that movie, Bill.
It comes down to this, Scott. People in the arts are dependent on money. They're dependent on the public. They're dependent. It's a product like any other product, like shoes or anything else, or cars. And everybody in this country has a right to decide what kind of car they want to drive, and they have a right to decide what kind of brand of shoes they wear, and all the rest. So my advice on this is just vote your conscience. If it bothers you enough to go, then don't, and don't deprive them of the money. Mel Gibson, in this particular case, has a history of making extraordinarily pro-American films. I mean, really remarkably pro-American films, pro-freedom films. I have a friend who says that Braveheart's the most pro-freedom movie ever made, and certainly The Patriot's very pro-American, and we were soldiers. That's a pro-American look at Vietnam. Yeah. That goes a long way with me. And to his credit, Gibson has never denied his demons and has never come to the kind of position that many people in Hollywood are, which is, it's none of your business, to hell with you.
Well, I've seen many movies and enjoyed many songs by people who have doubtless done many reprehensible things. I have not yet instituted background checks for actors, directors, cinematographers, or even key grips. Yeah, I'm glad I don't know about the private behavior of most entertainers, and I'm especially glad that the theater owner doesn't know about every horrible thing I've ever done. If he did, he might want to deny me a seat in his movie house. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But that doesn't mean that you have to support sinful behavior. Nevertheless, if I stopped buying things from sinners, I'd be hungry, naked, homeless, and bored. And if you ever stop buying things from sinners, I'll be out of a job. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for their gracious contributions.